Hello, I'm Mizo. Today we are having a look at social justice warrior SJW of 1960. And I knew him quite closely, in fact. It's a personal story. Now, Mr. Mukherjee was a lawyer of Darbhanga, Bihar. He put his son into medical school, and son was quite intelligent, and son had gone through 2 years of medical school on the way to becoming a doctor. Doctors at that period, they are still living in London, and they owned a lot of money, and they're quite well off. Some of them, most of them, nearly all of them. Doctors of the period, because there weren't sufficient doctors around, they used to make a lot of money. And going with money was social prestige, and everybody knew them. Anyhow, this boy, when he was in his second year in medical college, he suddenly decided to become a communist worker, political worker. He gave up his studies and went and joined the Communist Party of India. This is 65 or something like that. Now, the Communist Party, they sent him to the coal fields, and that's how I got to know him, because I am in fact still having a small business in the coal fields. So he ended up in the coal fields on the border of Bihar and Bengal as a political worker. Now there was this CPI leader called Nirmal Chatterjee, and he was a prominent leader and member of the Legislative Assembly of Bihar, doing quite well off, in fact. There was this inner party struggle, and Mr. Nirmal Chatterjee was accused of corruption, and he was thrown out of the party. The party committed fratricide, because then the power moved away from CPI and went to one of the splinter groups of the communist movement, which is called Marxist Coordination Council, MCC. These are details. We need not very much of the details. But our Mukherjee, he was a staunch communist. So he stayed with the Communist Party of India. But the power shifted to a splinter group. Now, in this period, what happened was, in Bengal, they went ballistic. There was this violent uprising of, you can call it a peasant uprising, but actually it wasn't that. Whatever, in Naxalbari, and Bengal was the California of India. When the British left India, actually Bengal was the capital of India for a very long period under the British. So Bengal was very well developed. They had small scale industry, and they had steel industry, and they had electricity. They had tea gardens. They had jute mills. So it was quite an industrialized place. And in 1930, the University of Calcutta, Bengal, actually produced a Nobel laureate from in physics, and that's the only science Nobelian India ever had. They were, in fact, quite good. Education was very good, but in a lot of ways it mirrors California. But after that, they went ballistic. They went extremely Marxist in nature, and they had all sort of worker movements going on, and they destroyed their industry. And part of that wave, because he was Mr. Mukherjee is working on the border, part of the wave came to his area too, and we had these violent confrontations going on. and violent trade unionism. It was at its height. The workers were instigated to murder a couple of managers. Murder them. They used to come in groups and beat a couple of managers to death. That was the thing. And the police will intervene, there firing going on, people are dying all over the place. So it was quite a revolutionary stuff. And heady stuff for a young man. And he was neck deep into it. And things stabilized. The industry fled from Bengal and literally went to Gujarat and Maharashtra and Punjab. Literally all the industrialists just ran away from there. Nobody of any importance was left. So Bengal became a graveyard of industries. In the meantime, Mr. Mukherjee was carrying on as a political worker. But they didn't have a charismatic leader. So the political power in that area went to the hands of the extremists. They were the MCC. MCC was Stalinist in nature. They had a crackpot leader who used to order hits on his own comrades. He was a pakka Stalinist. That too in India. He used to order. And they went for violent trade unionism. People firing guns and stuff like that. So obviously CPI was left out of that system. But he was a staunch and he used to make a small living out of trade unionism. Then things began to go wrong. This is how his father died. Turned out his father wasn't that rich. The mother died. Everything was sold off. Basically became a pauper. His father was rich according to Darbhanga standards, not according to not Cleveland West, even Indian standards. He was for Darbhanga standards, he was a rich guy, but that didn't make him a rich guy as far as the Indian standards are concerned. And upon his death, they found out that he didn't have any money left. Whatever money was left behind, the mother spent it, and by the time mother was dead, Mr. Mukherjee was a pauper. And he used to flaunt it around that I was a student in medical college, which was a dead thing. Anyway, then things settled down, and a lot of industries closed in the area. Sources of income dried up, and the government reformed the collieries. They made a big company out of it, big nationalized company out of it, a big corporate. Now the thing about corporate is that a small company can be blackmailed by physical violence even, but a corporate is difficult because if you just kill the manager, they'll file somebody else to be a manager. It's a faceless thing. It's very difficult to. You can close down the corporate, but it's very difficult to intimidate it. So, the income from extortion of collieries, they began to go down, and basically, what passed off as trade union was extortion. So, his income began to go flat, and the CPI's unions, they just collapsed finally. And all the unions became affiliated to Marxist Coordination Council, that is the splinter group. And Mr. Mukherjee was left with virtually no income. He became a beggar now on the street. And a generation passed around about 1980. We pick up the story now at around about 80. Things had now stabilized. And he could see with his own eyes stuff happening. Mr. Mukherjee could see that all the nationalized industries, the workers of nationalized industries were being paid 3 times. The workers of ordinary workers who are not inside the government sectors. So it is just a transfer of wealth from the poor to these new zamindars, that is people with jobs in the public sector. And mind you, in the government sector, the workers had an option. The option was to work or not to work. They could sit down idle and still collect your money. So they had the work was optional. So these people, the management of the government companies used to take contractors, and the contractors would run all sorts of stuff for them. So basically, the government companies are running on contractors, and I was one of those contractors. I still am one of the contractors. And now the difference between what contractors pay the workers and what the government pays for the same work in the same area, in the same virtually side by side, working side by side, is 10 times. Now it's gone up by 10 times. So there is a huge transfer of wealth, still transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich going on even now, as far as the nationalist sector is concerned. But they could live through that. This Mr. Mukherjee was now right on the sidelines of the political system. And then calamity struck to him. In irony, he got a brain tumor. Now he himself needed a doctor. All that talk about that I was a doctor, I could have become a doctor and became this thing, that finished because now he had a brain tumor and now he really needed the money. All those days he skimped on everything, somehow managed to survive. But the brain tumor, now he needed the money. He didn't have it. So he went and joined the splinter group. He was actually welcomed in the splinter group. He was very respected. By that time he was a very respected political worker. He was welcomed into the splinter group. And he used to ask money from the head of the splinter group. And for about 6 months, the guy paid up. The head of the splinter group paid up money. After 6 months, he said, this is not going to happen anymore. He stopped paying. And eventually, his brain tumor overcome him and he died. He wasn't married. He just died alone. There was nobody to come and even pick him up. All that political work he did mattered for nothing at all. And the end result was that there are just two classes of workers. One was a very, very rich, well-paid class, and there was a undergrowth of workers who were extremely poor. That was the end result of his political work. So, mind you, he was becoming a real doctor in life. He could have actually, if he had pursued his studies, then he could have done a lot of social work, because as a doctor, you can treat patients, poor patients. In fact, even now, a lot of doctors do treat poor patients free. It is very common, in fact, in India, because there is no health insurance and there is no, in theory, there is a government health service, but the government health service virtually doesn't work at all. So private doctors, they do treat patients for free. So he could have done that, and he could have done much more better than that, than doing this stupid communist stuff. This is just a story for all those social justice warriors who think that they have got the answers and who just parroting what the leaders are. Remember, there is a huge gap between a political worker and a politician. Politicians are never what they claim to be, of any hue. A political worker is a different species altogether. If you are a SJW and you are a political worker, not a politician, then think about your life. What you achieve in the end is what you are going to do today. With that, I'm going to end this talk with you. Thanks for listening in, guys. This is Mizo signing off.